Welcome to today's Crosspoint Devotion. Today I want to ask you a very simple question. Do you have any pets? I have found that in our church we have different families that have different types of pets. I know that we have some families that have some cats. I know that we have a family in our church that has a hedgehog as a pet, which I found to be very interesting. We have some families that have little fish in a fish bowl or in an aquarium. But I think that the majority of the families in our church, if there was one pet that probably is out there more than any other, it's puppy dogs. Do you have a puppy dog as a pet? Now, I've got to confess, and this is probably going to put me in a bad light with many of you, our family has never had any pets, and we don't have any dogs. Our children have grown up deprived. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, surely Carly Beth, Eli, and Clancy got to have a dog at some point. They didn't. And it's because Miss Kelly and myself were not really pet people, and so when our children were growing up, they were our pets. We had 3 of them. But nonetheless, many of you have puppy dogs, and I have found that puppy dogs like to bark. Now, although we don't have puppy dogs at our house, my neighbors on the left and the right and the neighbors across the street all have pets, and those are dogs. So we hear them barking quite frequently. If I go out in the backyard to pick up something, usually one of the dogs near us will begin to bark because I'm in my backyard and they can hear me in their backyard. If they see a squirrel running across the backyard, those dogs begin to bark. Dogs in general just really enjoy barking. They can bark when they hear someone pulling up in the street and stopping at the house nearby. They can bark because a bird flew in and got too close to the back window. Dogs just like to bark. It's part of their nature. And that's why I find Exodus chapter 11, verse 7 to be a very fascinating verse. This is when God had announced to Moses, it's time for the death angel to come through Egypt. God had sent Moses down to say to Pharaoh, let my people go. Pharaoh had not cooperated. So God had sent a series of plagues to get Pharaoh's attention and remind him, you're going to let my people go because that is what I've planned for them. Pharaoh was not cooperating, and after a series of 9 plagues, God said the final plague will be the death angel. And the death angel will come through, and the only reason the Hebrew people will be saved is they're going to slaughter a lamb and they're going to paint the doorpost around the door of their homes with blood, and when the death angel sees the blood, the death angel will pass over and not take the firstborn from that house. The Egyptians were going to lose all of their firstborn children, and this was going to be the mechanism that would lead Pharaoh to say to Moses and the Hebrew people, get out of here. But before that happened, God sent a message to Pharaoh, and this is what he said in verse 7 of Exodus chapter 11. But against all the Israelites, whether people or animals, not even a dog will snarl, so that you may know the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. On the night the death angel passed through Egypt, not a single dog barked in Israel. Now the Hebrew people lived in Goshen. And you know how it is with dogs. They can sense everything. It's just like I said earlier. They can see the squirrel. They can watch the bird. They can hear a noise in the distance. In our neighborhood sometimes, when the dogs near us hear the garbage truck in a different neighborhood, when the days come when they're picking up the garbage, the dogs in our neighborhood are barking at the sound they hear in the next neighborhood. God said on the night the death angel comes through, none of the dogs in the land of Goshen who belong to the Israelites will make a single snarl or bark. Now, what was God trying to say to Pharaoh with that statement in Exodus 11:7? I think God was trying to say to Pharaoh, you don't respect me and you don't have any reverence for me. But even the animals that I've put on this earth that I created will not make a sound because they know I'm at work on the night the death angel comes through. And they will remain silent in my presence because they respect me and they revere me more than you. Isn't it interesting that sometimes God's creation is more reverent of Him and His power than we are as humans? And guess what? It's not just Pharaoh sometimes who misses the reverence of God. Sometimes it's you, and sometimes it's me. The God that we serve, that has saved us in Jesus Christ, He is a God who's to be revered and reverenced in all aspects of our lives. All of creation is in reverence of Him. So why don't we choose to do the same? So this week, if you haven't done it lately, would you take a step back and consider the great power and the majesty and the grace of our God and stand in awe of Him and stand in reverence of Him because He's worthy of it. Well, I hope that'll encourage you in your walk with Jesus, and we hope you'll come back and join us for the next Crosspoint Devotion.